I moved to Rosewood Lane in search of silence. Not the peaceful kind. No, the desperate, final kind. My life had unraveled in ways I still can't fully explain. A decade-long marriage ended in one afternoon. A corporate layoff over Zoom. Friends who quietly disappeared when they didn't know what to say anymore. So when I found an ad for a cheap rental in a small town I'd never heard of, I didn't think. I just packed, drove, and moved. The house was small, just 2 bedrooms and a sunroom, but it backed up to a line of thick woods, and the neighborhood was eerily still. No barking dogs, no kids on bikes, just breeze, trees, and the occasional crow. Honestly, that first week was heaven. I read. I drank too much coffee. I even started drawing again. But then, the house showed up. It was on a Thursday night. I'd gone out back to stretch my legs, mug in hand. The moon was bright enough to make shadows dance across my lawn. That's when I saw it. A pale blue 2-story house directly across the street from mine. It startled me because I knew for a fact that lot had been empty. The for sale sign was always tilted sideways, the grass overgrown. I'd even commented on it during a call with my sister, yet here it stood. This old house with gabled windows and a wraparound porch. It looked aged, like it had been sitting there for decades, shutters crooked. Ivy wrapped around the columns like veins. At first, I told myself I must have missed it. Maybe it had always been there and my mind had been too clouded to notice. But something didn't sit right. I couldn't stop staring at it. The next morning, I brought it up with my only neighbor, an elderly man named Mr. Turner, who always seemed to be trimming the same rose bush. "Hey," I said casually, "did someone finally move into that house across the street?" He didn't even glance up, just said, "There's no house there." I blinked. "What?" He straightened, met my eyes, and said it again, slower this time. "There's no house there." And then he turned and walked into his home without another word. I laughed nervously, convinced he was messing with me. But that night, when I looked out my kitchen window, the house was still there, still dark, still waiting. At exactly 11:03 p.m., a single light turned on in the attic window. I was mid-sip and I nearly dropped my mug. The light didn't flicker, it didn't move. It just stayed, like a spotlight trained on the street, unwavering and cold. I stood there, staring at it for nearly an hour. I couldn't explain why. My legs locked up, and I had this gnawing sense that if I turned away, something would change, or vanish. The next few nights followed the same pattern. Quiet day, still house. 11:03 p.m., light in the attic, and each night, I watched. Sometimes I'd see a shape move behind the curtains, just a sliver, like someone pacing. On the 5th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I crossed the street. The closer I got, the more the air seemed to thicken. It got colder too, unnaturally so. My breath puffed in front of me, despite the warm spring air. When I reached the porch, my stomach flipped. The wood beneath my feet was damp, and each board groaned like it hadn't been walked on in years. The smell was undeniable. Mildew, rotting wood, something older. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, louder this time. The door creaked open, slow and deliberate. I wanted to turn and run, but I didn't. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and a strange metallic tang. Every piece of furniture was covered in plastic, and the wallpaper looked like it was bleeding from water damage. I took a cautious step in. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice felt swallowed by the house. A music box started playing upstairs. I froze. It was the kind of sound that doesn't belong in the modern world. Delicate, almost too perfect, like it had been trapped in time. I moved toward the stairs before my brain could stop me. Each step creaked louder than the last. When I reached the landing, the music stopped. Dead silence. The hallway stretched farther than it should have, lined with doors that hadn't been there from the outside. I picked the one at the very end, the one with peeling white paint and rust around the knob. I turned it. Inside was the attic, dim, dusty, with a single bulb swaying slightly. That's when I saw it. A chair in the center of the room, facing the window, and in that chair, something sat. Its back was to me. Long gray hair spilled down its shoulders. Its frame was thin, almost skeletal. I couldn't move. Then, it turned its head. Not its body, just its head. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just ran. Down the stairs, out the door, across the street, into my house. I locked every door, drew every curtain, and sat in the dark until sunrise. The next day, I woke up late and cautiously peered outside. The house was gone. Not just empty, gone. The lot was empty again. Overgrown grass, tilted for sale sign. No sign of construction, no foundation, no tire tracks, nothing. I walked over in daylight, heart pounding. The ground was undisturbed. No footprints, no trash. Just a hollow silence that felt too loud. Later that day, I confronted Mr. Turner. "You saw it, didn't you?" he asked before I could say anything. I nodded slowly. His expression darkened. "It comes every 10 years. No one really knows why, but when it shows up, someone goes missing." "Missing?" He looked down. "The house. It feeds on loneliness, pain, regret. It shows up when someone fits the bill." My blood ran cold. "Who went missing last time?" He didn't answer, just closed his door. I researched old records that night. There were incidents dating back to the 1950s, reports of people seeing a strange house that others denied existed. Each time, someone from Rosewood Lane would disappear, quietly. No signs of foul play, no bodies, just gone. I've lived here for a year now. The house hasn't returned, but I haven't left either. Some nights, I sit on my porch at exactly 11:03 p.m., waiting. Not because I want it to come back, but because I know, deep down, that it will. And next time, it might not let me leave. My name is Caleb, and I'm not sure how to tell this story without sounding insane. It began last summer, right after Clara and I got married. We were young, happy, and hopelessly romantic about starting fresh in a quiet town. When we found a small rental house in a place called Brookwell, nestled between rolling hills and heavy woods, we thought it was perfect. The town was beautiful, picture-perfect homes, warm smiles from strangers, farmers' markets every Sunday. It felt like something out of a novel. But there was one thing no one ever talked about: the Hollow, a dense patch of forest just outside town. The Hollow was rarely mentioned in conversation. When it was, people lowered their voices or changed the subject. We'd hear things like, "Kids shouldn't play near there," or "Don't go jogging too far out that way." Clara and I thought it was just local folklore. Every small town had some creepy legend. We didn't think it was anything more than superstition. That was our first mistake. One evening in late August, Clara decided to go for a jog before dinner. It was still light out, and she took her usual trail that looped near the Hollow. I kissed her goodbye, poured myself a drink, and waited. An hour passed, then another. At first, I wasn't too worried. Maybe she'd run into someone, or taken a longer route. But when her phone went straight to voicemail and the sun dipped below the trees, a knot formed in my chest. I jumped in the car and drove every street within a mile radius, yelling her name out the window like a lunatic. Nothing. By midnight, I called the police. They organized a search party, and dozens of people combed through the woods that night. Dogs barked, flashlights danced between the trees. Still, no sign of her. No shoe prints, no torn clothes, no signs of struggle. Just silence. The days that followed were a blur. Missing posters, interviews with the local news, concerned neighbors dropping off casseroles I didn't touch. I barely ate. I didn't sleep. The house felt too quiet, too hollow without her laugh echoing off the walls. Then, 4 nights after Clara vanished, something happened that cracked whatever was left of my sanity. At 2:03 a.m., I woke to the sound of the front door creaking open. I grabbed the bat beside my bed, heart pounding, and crept downstairs. The door was wide open, swaying slightly in the breeze. No one was there, but muddy footprints led from the doorway to the living room. I followed them with shaking hands. They stopped at the fireplace, and there, sitting in the middle of the rug, was Clara's necklace, the silver locket I'd given her on our honeymoon. She never took it off. Never. I dropped to my knees, staring at it. I was so sure she had been in that room. The police came again. They swept for prints, checked for forced entry. Nothing. No signs anyone had been there. No explanation for the footprints or the necklace. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just sat on the couch, holding the locket in my hand, whispering her name into the darkness. Then I heard humming, a soft melody, like a lullaby. Familiar, Clara's voice. I shot up and ran outside. The humming was coming from the edge of the woods, from the Hollow. I called out, "Clara!" and sprinted toward the trees, flashlight bouncing in front of me. The forest swallowed the sound of my voice, but the humming, it continued, until suddenly, it stopped. And then, I saw her. She stood between the trees, barefoot, pale. Her dress was torn, dirty. Her hair hung loose and wet across her shoulders. But it was her, Clara, I whispered. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me with wide, dark eyes. Something about them felt off, like they were too big for her face, too empty. I stepped forward. She tilted her head slowly and said, "You shouldn't be here." Then, in the space of a blink, she was gone, like a mirage. I don't remember how I got back to the house. I just remember locking the door, all the windows, curling up on the floor like a child. The next morning, I told the sheriff what I'd seen. He looked at me like I was broken. Maybe I was. He suggested I talk to a grief counselor. Instead, I started researching. Turns out, Clara wasn't the first to disappear in the hollow. There were at least 7 cases over the past 40 years, all similar. Someone goes out for a walk or a run and simply never returns. No remains, no belongings, just gone. Some of the missing came back, but not for long. One man in the 1980s showed up on his porch 3 days after vanishing, mute, eyes wide, fingernails torn and bloody. He hung himself a week later. A woman found in 1995 was walking barefoot down Main Street, smiling and singing an old folk song no one recognized. She collapsed before anyone could reach her and never woke up. I needed answers. I needed her. So I started going into the hollow every night. I memorized the path I took that first night when I saw her. I brought offerings, her favorite perfume, her scarf, the little sketchbook she carried everywhere. I'd lay them down on a tree stump and wait. Sometimes I'd hear her laugh. Sometimes I'd see movement in the trees. Then, on the 10th night, she came again, standing exactly where she had before. Only this time she smiled. It was the most horrifying thing I've ever seen, not because of her teeth or the unnatural stillness of her body, but because it wasn't her smile. It was someone else using her face to mock what it thought love looked like. I stepped back. "Clara," I said. "What are you?" She tilted her head again. Same motion, same void in her eyes. "You should go," she whispered, "before it finds you too." "What finds me?" I shouted. "Who are you talking about?" But she was already fading. I ran forward, trying to grab her, to pull her back, and the moment I crossed a certain point between the trees, I collapsed. My ears rang. My nose started bleeding. I couldn't move. The air turned thick and bitter, like breathing smoke underwater. Then I heard it, something moving between the trees, heavy, slow, breathing. I dragged myself back toward the road, and as soon as I left the boundary of the hollow, everything stopped. The air cleared. My nose stopped bleeding. My ears went silent. And I knew then I hadn't seen Clara. I'd seen something wearing her shape. I still live in Brookwell. I can't leave. Not yet. Clara's body was never found. Her parents moved away. The case went cold. Everyone has moved on. Everyone but me. I go back into the hollow once a week. I don't know what I'm searching for anymore. Proof? Closure? A glimpse of her? The real her? Or maybe I just want to know what lives there, what takes people, what wears them like masks and speaks with voices it's stolen, and most of all, why it picked her. My name is Diane, and before I begin, I just want to say I was never someone who believed in ghosts, curses, or any of that. I was raised in a very practical family. If something creaked, it was the wind. If you felt scared, it was probably just your imagination. But after what happened in Fairhope, I don't think I'll ever be the same. It started 2 years ago when my husband Peter and I decided to leave the chaos of the city. He had gotten a promotion at a manufacturing company out in Fairhope, a quiet, picturesque town tucked between the woods and a winding lake. We'd been craving calm, somewhere to breathe and maybe start a family. Fairhope was inviting, almost too inviting. People smiled a lot. The town center had cobbled streets and old lantern-style lamps, fresh pies cooling in bakery windows. Everyone greeted each other by name. We rented a lovely colonial-style home on Barrow Street. It had 2 floors, a small garden in the back, and ivy crawling along one side of the porch. Every house on the block was well kept, except for one. The house at the very end of the street looked like it had been swallowed by time. Peeling paint, a slanted roof, windows so thick with grime you couldn't see through them. Ivy covered the entire left side, crawling up like green claws. I asked our elderly neighbor, Judith, about it one afternoon while pruning the rose bushes. "That house?" she said, frowning. "You're better off pretending it's not there." I laughed. "Seriously? It's just an abandoned house." She dropped her shears and stared at me. "We don't talk about it. Not around here." That was the first red flag. I told Peter, but he just chuckled. "Old towns are full of urban legends. That place probably just has mold and raccoons." But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I'd catch myself staring at it from our upstairs window, watching the stillness, like it was holding its breath. Then, the mail started. It began innocently. A single envelope with no return address. Inside was a black and white photo of a little girl standing in front of that house. Her dress was old-fashioned. Her face was wrong, wide-eyed, pale, like she had seen something that never left her. No one else in the neighborhood received anything like it. A week later, another envelope came. This time, a close-up of the girl's face. Behind her, the window of the house. Someone stood there. A shadow. Faceless. Tall. Wrong. Peter said it was probably a prank. Some weird local art project or bored teenagers. I wanted to believe that, but every time I saw that girl's eyes, it felt like she was staring through me. Then came the dreams. I started waking up at 3:17 every night. The same time, I'd be sweating, heart pounding, and I'd hear a soft knocking sound, like nails tapping glass. One night I opened the curtain and saw footprints in the dew on our lawn, bare feet, small ones. Still, I didn't say anything to anyone. Not yet. One morning, while Peter was at work, I decided to walk past the house. Just walk by. That was all. I wasn't going to do anything reckless. But when I reached the front gate, I froze. The front door was cracked open, just a sliver. I told myself the wind probably did it. But there was no wind. Everything was still. Too still. Even the birds were silent. I stepped closer. There was a smell, musty, like rotting wood and something sour. I reached out to touch the door, and just as my fingertips brushed the surface, it slammed shut, hard. I stumbled back and ran home, heart racing. I finally told Peter everything, the mail, the photos, the dreams. He stared at me for a long time before quietly asking, "Are you okay?" I wasn't, but I didn't know what to say. He told me to stay away from that house. He promised he'd look into it himself. That night, he sat on the porch with a flashlight until nearly 2 a.m., waiting to catch someone, but no one came. A few days later, I went to the town library to dig up records. The librarian was hesitant, but let me browse the archived newspapers. That's when I found the article. A girl named Eliza Holloway had gone missing. She lived at the house at the end of Barrow Street. The article said her parents claimed she started talking to the walls, saying she wasn't alone in the house anymore. Neighbors reported screams in the night, strange flickering lights and chanting. Then, one morning, the family was gone, vanished. The doors locked from the inside. The town never tore the house down. Instead, they buried the story. That night, I had the worst dream yet. I was inside the house. The walls were weeping, literally leaking a black sludge. I heard a soft humming. I followed the sound to the upstairs bedroom, where Eliza stood by the window. She turned, and her eyes were hollow. "I'm still here," she said. "He won't let me leave." I woke up screaming. Peter held me, shaking. He didn't say it, but I could see it in his eyes. He was scared too. The next morning, there were muddy footprints on our porch, and on the front step was a child's shoe. We packed our bags that night. Peter said we'd leave in the morning. He had to go to work and wrap things up. I stayed home, locked the doors, tried to distract myself. Then, around noon, the power went out. The house was quiet, too quiet. I thought I heard movement upstairs, light footsteps. I told myself it was the wind again, or maybe the old pipes groaning. But then something whispered from the hallway. My name, Diane. I froze. It was a child's voice, software sweet, too sweet. I grabbed my phone, but it was dead. I don't even remember dropping it. I stepped into the hallway. It was cold, freezing, like I'd stepped into a meat locker. Down the hall, the front door creaked open slowly. No one stood there, just the house. At the end of the street, door open, waiting. I don't remember walking to it. I just remember standing on the porch, trembling, my hand reaching for the doorknob. Inside it was dark, heavy. The same furniture from the 1970s, dust everywhere, the smell of decay. Then, footsteps upstairs, a child's laugh. "Eliza?" I whispered. I walked up, legs like jelly. The door to the bedroom opened before I touched it. She stood there, in the middle of the room, wearing the same dress from the photo, smiling. "You came back," she whispered. Before I could speak, the walls began to shake. A low growl filled the house. Her eyes turned black. "He's here." I ran. I didn't stop until I got home. Peter came back to find me huddled in the corner of the kitchen, rocking back and forth. We moved that night, left everything behind. But here's the thing. Last week, months after we left, I got another envelope. No stamp, no address. Inside was a photo. Eliza and me, standing together, outside the house, smiling, like I never left.